In a world of limitless opportunities and countless challenges, the choices we make manifest themselves into the very roads that guide us. And the tribulations and triumphs that shape, weather, and bind these paths together are the very essence of what makes the world such a beautifully strange place. But we walk our path with no map, in search of answers that nobody has, simply hoping that we don't get lost along the way. So maybe just sharing our story of where we come from and the things that have guided us along the way can be enough to guide those lost in their own path.
I'm Zach Bonanza, and this is the Lost Guidance Podcast.
All right. Hello and welcome everybody to a very special Tuesday edition of the Lost Guidance Podcast. I am your sunburnt host, Zach Bonanza, joined in the studio by Dr.Kevin Hoehn. Hello and thank you.
Hey, Zach. Thanks for having me. Good
Absolutely.
To be here.
Thank you so much for coming on. Kevin here has a plethora of awesome adventures and stories, a few of which we're going to get into in detail today. But just to start it off, let me give you guys an idea of the kind of things that Kevin's interested in. I, too, am an avid hiker. I like to get into the Adirondacks, but it's no degree as near as Kevin's list here. So a few of the things that you had brought up in some of your past adventures were the Temagami, Ontario canoeing trip, kayaking in Newfoundland, Switzerland hiking, hiking trail sections of the Appalachian Trail, hiking through Ireland, hiking through Greenland, the Grand Canyon, Wales, making it to Everest and the base camp of the Tibet side and the Nepal side, which is really what we're going to get into a lot today. Kilimanjaro, you reached the top of Kilimanjaro, you climbed Qatar, India. I mean, it's amazing the things you have done here, and the list goes on. I can imagine. But let's try and at least, put it in a little bit of focus here. The thing I like to do with all my guests is just say, let's start off with how you got into your love and your passion of hiking and how that guided you to some of your biggest, adventures and features.
Yeah, I think it all goes back for me to Boy Scouts. I mean, Troop 96 at the Elks Club in Rome, New York, we were always doing outdoor adventure. And then when I was in college, I got involved with the Adirondack Mountain Club because at Albany Pharmacy, I'm a pharmacist, or was, retired. We didn't have an outing club, so I would go on adventures every weekend with the Adirondack Mountain Club up to the high peaks and Catskills. And the big thing up there is to get your 46ers. And from there,
Exactly.
it just kind of morphed into hiking. When I moved to Maine and worked as a pharmacist up there, there's a lot of places to go up there. And then
What part of Maine did you live in?
Near the capital, Augusta. I worked in a place
okay.
called Waterville. But we would go up to like Baxter State Park and, of course, the ocean, and there's all kinds of trails. And then right around 1993, I got to give a shout out to the group that's kind of made this all possible, Pack Paddle Ski. It's an adventure group out of South Lima. It's a suburb of Rochester. And the French brothers lead these trips all over the place. And my wife was good enough to let me go on these adventures. And the next thing I know is every year I'd pick a goal, and my wife was good to let me try that. And they just kept getting bigger and bigger. And you rattle off a resume of these hikes that I've done already. So it's kind of... gave me a experience that I did all these adventures when I was younger and got them built up this hiking list that you just rattled off.
Yeah, I mean, we had discussed prior to you coming on, kind of some of the things we wanted to hit on. And when I was mentioning earlier, I was going through my email, and it's like, this seemed like it scrolled forever, but it's amazing. So this group, you're still a member of the Pack Paddle? And
yeah, it's not really a membership type thing. They post adventures and you sign up for them, and you show up and you go, and they assess the your capabilities beforehand.
Wow.
And some of them, they're a little Spartan. You go to the bathroom in the woods, you eat food that's cooked over a fire sometimes. And
isn't that the best part of it, though?
Yeah, they're not like a Disney cruise or a trip to Las Vegas. It's a different thing that you. And when I would go back to work and tell people how I paid money to do this, and they said, "Oh my gosh, you sleep on the ground most times." but they're all adventures that are way off the tourist curve, I call them.
Absolutely. That's where you're really getting the essence of it. So, like I had mentioned, I think one of the most impressive and standoutish points of your resume you had mentioned is the Everest base camps.
Yep.
I mean, just to be one of the members, and we had said before, I think I looked up the number. About 1,000 people try to hike Everest every year, right? So you figure...
Roughly, yeah. It depends. Everest is
it's an exclusive club.
It's a definite one place when you go to. There's a lot of reverence for that. Everest is, I think, the ultimate achievement for a climber. Whenever it's always described as the pinnacle for even in like business talk or sports adventures, it's your Everest of things. In 2019, for example, I mean, it's a hot topic because right now is when people are just finishing up trying to summit. And in 2019, there's been 11 deaths already. It's something you don't undertake very lightly.
It's astonishing.
They had almost 400 permits to climb to the top this year, which means you have at least 400 people accompanying you. And the problem is you get tremendous traffic jams up there in a situation where there's not a lot of structure or support if you get into trouble. And because of the jet stream, the best time to climb Everest is mid-May to the first week in June. After that, the monsoons come in and the mountain's socked in, and there's a lot of risk for snowfall and avalanches. So what happened this year is they only had really 5 good days of climbing, so they had to get 800 people up to the top within 5 days. And
like we just said, if 1,000 go all through that whole season, and you said it's May 15th to June,
first week of June, roughly, yeah.
I mean, you're talking 2.5 weeks. You usually fit 1,000. You're doing 805 days,
and it gets crazy because people pay about $60,000 to $80,000 to get to the top, and they are sometimes a little pushy, like, I paid this money, get me to the top. And there was a picture about 2.5 weeks ago where there was like a grocery line of climbers. It must have been at least 100 on one section of the trail right before something called the Hillary Step, which is a area where you have to do some climbing straight up on rock. And it just got to be like, a line of people trying to achieve the top. And it just made you wonder. Most people try to go up there and experience it by themselves. Even if they got to the summit, I don't know if there would have been enough room for all these people. And the dilemma that's going on right now with the Nepal government is there's these people that are charging $30,000 to take you up there that don't have the skill set or the connections if you get in trouble. And so there's a lot of strain on that mountain system right now. So what I did in 2007, I approached Everest Base Camp on the Tibet side, which is a little bit more regulated because the Chinese are in Tibet now. And then in 2014, we came across the Nepal side and we got to base camp. And there's also other issues up there. There's junk that's accumulating, like oxygen canisters.
Because Nepal is, you said it was like 19,000 is the base camp?
Yeah, something like that.
And Tibet is like 17 or?
Yeah, something like that. I can't remember the exact statistics, but it's high.
Yeah, and so people bring all this luggage up there and all these supplies. You don't often want to take them down.
Take them down. And there's another big issue is human waste, too. At that altitude, it doesn't decompose. So they're actually having people carted out, and they're taking it to a gigantic cesspool that doesn't really degrade or whatever. So there's a lot of strain on the mountain right now. And people are telling stories about, once you there's 4 camps that you try to achieve, and then you do the ultimate summit push. But once you get up high enough, you're in what's called the death zone, where your body is actively dying because of the oxygen levels are low and the cold temperatures. And so
the death zone.
There's almost these unspoken rules where it's all focused on self-preservation. So if you see somebody in trouble, there's not much you can do to help them. And maybe enlist some Sherpas, which are Nepalese guides that are, you really rely on. But you're burning up so much oxygen, the body has stopped growing and actually is reversing. So it can be really, really dangerous situation, especially if the weather comes in. On some of the lines this year that you clip into, that you use to catch you if you fall, there was dead bodies on those lines, and people were just stepping over them.
Wow!
But that's part of the problem. It's just become so.
What altitude is the death zone?
I know Everest is 29,000 feet, so I think it's above 27.
Wow.
Or 26. Don't quote me on that, but I know it's. It's really hard. And the other aspect too is because of the pressure to get to the top. When you're at the top, you're only halfway done. You still got to get down. and there's kind of like informal turnaround time, maybe 1 or 2 p.m. Usually you start the night before climbing or very early in the morning, but by 2 p.m. you should be turning around. Otherwise, you're going to maybe spend a night on the mountain, which most people don't survive. There have been people that have survived, but it's a very scary situation. And in 1996, that was the genesis of the whole catastrophe that John Krakauer wrote about, Into Thin Air. I think 16 people died. They pushed to get to the top, and then a storm came in, and it was a big disaster.
They developed a movie about that,
Yep,
I believe, right?
Yep, there was a movie.
Wow.
But you rely heavily on the indigenous people called Sherpas who
Yeah.
grew up in the valley there.
And they were the first ones to reach the top, right? In like 1922?
No, in 1922, Mallory out of England tried that, and his body was lost. It was recently found, I think, in the early or late 1999 by a guy named Conrad Aker. But no, 1922 they started, but the climbers got lost. The first ones were Tenzing Norgay and I can't think of the other guy's name. Oh my God, the beekeeper from New Zealand, Hillary,
Hillary,
were
yeah.
the two guys that got up there. And since then, it's really picked up steam. Has become, as people are charging money to guide these people up. But now it's a lot more regimented with different camps, and there's a support system and things like that. But the early climbers, there was a lot of unknowns and uncertainty because they were trailblazers. They didn't know where they were going. But the Sherpas are the indigenous people that live in that valley, that are climatized and very used to the mountain. We had Sherpas hiking with us in the trip I made to Nepal, and I think 5 of the Sherpas had summited Everest 9 times. So
Wow.
between all 5 of them.
And don't they often get paid extra to like carry things forward?
Yep.
So they have this enormous pack load on them, and they're also climbing up with you, helping you. And they're also they tend to go forward and then back a lot of times in rough situations to help people, right?
Yep, that's what they get paid for, and a lot of them rely on the money that's their annual income to get things going.
And so we were talking a little bit about how some people are trying to cut the costs, and now, I mean, it almost seems like that culture is kind of obligated by it because I read recently, I think it was 2018, they took a GDP of the Nepal area and everything, and the average was like $900 or something. That's not very much to live off of. And so if not taking this money from these tourists who want to really push you and get to the top, what are you going to do? So it's almost like obligated for that, right?
I was in India in 2015, and my roommate was one of the Sherpas that had hiked with us. Lapka is his name. He lives in one of the villages very far up in the valley, really close to Everest. And it's funny, I was eating supper with him one night, and I just asked him how many times he's been up Everest. And he held his hand up in front of me with all the fingers splayed like this, and I thought he was just saying, hang on a second, I'm eating, I'm swallowing. But when he done eating, he goes, he's been to the top 5 times. And since then, I think he's been a couple more times. But I asked him, what are you going to do next summer? Are you still going to guide? Because I believe he's in his late 50s, and he said he really didn't have any choice. He needed the money to do that. So for a lot of them, this is their employment. And these guys are, rock solid climbers. You can depend on them.
Yeah.
And a lot of Sherpas have died. And we were actually up there. There was a fund to raise money for the widows of Sherpas that have died because they had kids and children and things like that. So it's a very dangerous profession. But on the book here, these you can see on the cover, which I know the audience cannot.
No, I can hold it up for him.
This is us. We one night towards the end, as we were coming out in Nepal, we decided to be the waiters for the Sherpas at one of the tea houses and serve them supper. They were always waiting on us, so we said, "Hey, guys, this is your chance to take it easy. We're going to serve you food." And a lot of them are, kind of find it as a novelty. They're very uncomfortable. They weren't used to having somebody wait on them. But for us, it was fun to do. But yeah, and there's a lot.
I'm sure that meant the world to them for you guys to do that too.
It was
to pay the respect to them.
Good experience there. But that's a little bit about the Everest history. Let me tell you a little bit mine if you want to go.
Yeah, I want to tell me about your experience getting up it.
The first peak, I guess, or the first thing that caught my interest was there was a trip that Pack Paddle Ski put on to going to Tibet in 2007, and I said, "Whoa, that sounds kind of off the radar." So let me look into it, and I signed up, and we flew to Beijing, and then we caught an airplane to the kind of the center capital, I guess you could call it, of Tibet, called Lhasa. And that's the home of the Dalai Lama. He grew up there when he was very young in this large palace, and the Chinese invaded or took over the country in 1949. He had to go live in exile in India. And the Potala Palace is this huge palace. I'm sure people have seen pictures of it before, and it's hundreds of years old. But as we we tried to acclimatize in Lhasa for a few days before we actually started towards the base camp in Tibet. And it was a weird city. It was you could see the stark contrast of the old city plus the new. The Chinese had moved in, and they were bringing all this new technology and inventions in electricity and TVs and things like that. Yeah, you could see the old people living in these houses, mud houses, no central heat. And you would walk through the markets and things like that, and there'd be large slabs of yak meat just lying around,
Wow.
covered with flies. And you saw pilgrims there who had come from all over Tibet to worship in this temple, the Zhongkang Temple, I think it was called. And we actually saw pilgrims that would, this kind of caught us off guard. They would say a prayer, get totally prone, prostrate themselves, and then stand up. And they did that for hundreds of miles. And they had dirt marks on their foreheads from doing that. And they had these like boards on their hands so their hands wouldn't get calloused from the dirt. And as you walk through the city, it was almost something like the Star Wars bar scene. You could see nomads, farmers, monks, foreigners, markets, and it was just
Wow.
the place was just buzzing with
What an amalgamation of people.
activity. And the tourists that were there were from all over the world. I mean, it's kind of like a mecca for those that are looking to find themselves, like for lack of a better word. But the people that would come wore their best from the countryside to this temple would wear their best clothing and jewelry. Turquoise was really big type jewelry there. And then everywhere you look are the prayer flags, which I'm sure people have seen before. And the premise for the prayer flags is they have prayers on them. And as the wind catches the prayer flag, the premise is the prayer flies off the flag and goes to the sky. And there's different colors. There's like blue, white, red, green, and yellow. And each one symbolizes a different thing. The blue is the sky, white is the air, red obviously is fire, green is water, and yellow is earth. But those flags have a premise that they send prayers to the heavens as the wind catches them. We also ran into these gigantic things called prayer wheels, which are these circular drums. And there's usually 5 or 6 of them in a row. And as you walk by them, you grab a handle and spin it around. And these drums are full of prayers. So the theory there, too, is the drum spins around, the prayers go off to the heavens. And we summited a couple mountains on the way. We didn't climb the mountains, but we got out and we threw to the sky these things called prayer papers, which would also fly to the sky. Yeah, there's a prayer paper right there.
Oh, this okay?
Yeah, you just throw them out, and they'd fly to the sky. And the theory is the prayers are off there.
That's very cool. So it's kind of similar. I've heard a similar thing for Native Americans. They believe in the tobacco. You say the prayers into the tobacco,
Yep.
and that's why you smoke it, and it gets into the ethers and goes to the spirit animals in the sky.
Same sky. Yeah, it was a very religious country.
So these are some of the pictures of your
Yep.
Tibetan base camp trip.
Yeah, that's it.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was as we left Lhasa, in some of the pictures you can see, which the audience cannot. It became
I'll post these afterward, guys. Don't worry. I'll post up some pictures for you.
But it was very desolate, rocks, no trees, streams, big blue skies, and cold and desolate. That's all I remember. When we got towards the base camp in Tibet, the Chinese were building a road because at the time what they wanted to do, the Olympics were on their way, and they wanted someone to carry the torch from the base of Everest all the way to Beijing to start the Olympics that year. So there was kind of a road, but the kind of construction equipment was very basic. And the road, some of the pictures will show you there. We went off the road a couple times in our Land Rovers, but as we got dropped off and started walking. We were way off the roads and worked our way towards the base camp. And the base camp was kind of funny. We stayed in outside of a monastery. It was the highest monastery in Tibet, and we had our tents there that we pitched. And we would walk maybe a mile or two up the road to the Everest Base Camp Chinese side. And from there, you had to have a permit, which was strictly enforced by the Chinese. No permit, you couldn't go beyond that. But there was like this little tent city that had come up where people were selling gear in case you forgot something. There was a post office. I mailed some postcards from the Everest Base Camp, Tibet Side City. And then there was a lot of people cooking food there. And one of the delicacies, I guess, is yak butter tea, which they make butter and then they make this tea out of it. It was all right. It wasn't great. I don't know.
Not your biggest fan?
No, I don't know what happened. All I could think of was the butter might be rancid. How do they keep it up there?
Yeah.
And they were selling, yak meat and things like that that they would cook.
Because what's the temperature at this altitude?
It was cold.
It was pretty brittle.
Cold, so yeah, and then I think both of the highest tents on both of these trips, I had everything on in my sleeping bag, and I was still cold.
Wow.
And but that's something I remember from that trip. The other aspect that caught us off guard is that the Tibetan monks do something they call sky burial. We didn't see one close up. We saw one in the distance. We visited, I think, 5 monasteries and saw the monks doing their debates and prayer services. We attended a number of those, and they would give us hot water to drink or hot tea. But a sky burial is when you perish or die, they kind of chop up your body and leave it out on the stones for these large birds, which are kind of like large crows and ravens. They're called goraks, and they'll come and eat the human remains and then fly away. And the premise for the sky burial is your body, your spirit, or whatever is going off into the heavens, and flying all over the place.
So again, kind of similar to Native Americans, and it's kind of crazy to say. My grandmother wants to do that. Do I let her?
I don't know. Probably. I don't
Probably not.
Like I said, we didn't get close. We could see it in the distance. I still remember that, seeing it in the distance.
How eerie! Was it a bit of a culture shock? All this stuff at once?
Yeah, well, it was it was fascinating. I like to take pictures. I'm a photographer, and it was just everywhere you looked, there was a photo of something that was so different than I've seen anywhere else. So it was a culture shock, but it was like being immersed in this culture that was old. It was different than
ancient, really.
Ancient, yeah.
Yeah.
Struggling with the new mores coming down into the city of Lhasa and what they were bringing, like I said, electricity, TV, and all those things. And a lot of the Chinese would visit Lhasa, and they'd be all dressed up in the latest fashion design, and to see the monks and the farmers, it was just contrast all over the place. One of the things that we noticed, too, is the kids all had these slingshots. I think all of us bought these. They were like 2 ropes with a little pocket in it. And these kids would, extremely accurate throwing rocks, hitting these, targets. So we bought a couple of those. I did know how to use it at one time. Now I have long forgotten about it. And we did go into one village. One of the hikers that was with us wanted to get some yak yarn so his wife could make something with this yak yarn. I'm not sure what, like a sweater. But we went into this village that nobody probably visited. As we explained, our guide explained what we were looking for. They got the whole group together, assembled everybody. We met with the village elder, and then we negotiated to buy this yak yarn, which we didn't understand all the back and forth, but it was probably 40 cents or 50 cents worth of yak yarn. We bought a whole bunch of it, which they probably thought weird. Here's these tourists from America buying this stuff that's all over the place. But
wow.
But that was one of the adventures we encountered. But it seems like every time you turn around, there's some kind of strange thing happening that you could never have predicted or foresaw.
Yeah. Wow. It's kind of amazing. And it's so, their culture, again, is so just completely different and almost backwards in our mindset that you wouldn't think that how a whole day adventure turns into going to a neighbor village and just try to get some yarn to make your own clothing, Yep.
But it was, like I said, it was something else. And I look back on it now at some of the pictures, and I'm just thinking, wow. I'm not sure. And then I'm not sure if you can go back there. I'm not sure about access right now, because about 2 years after we left there, there was a lot of conflict between the native Tibetans and the Chinese. They were setting themselves on fire. I think part of it was like the Olympics. They wanted to highlight that Tibet was still occupied by the Chinese, and the Tibetan view. And the Chinese view was it was part of China. They just regained control of it. But there was a lot of protests there. But that experience was, a lot of people use the word trip of a lifetime. That was a trip of a lifetime, that side for sure.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you think that the Chinese culture is kind of extinguishing the Tibetan ways, and that in our lifetime that might no longer exist?
Well, it's the native Tibetans are very strong to their Buddhist religion. They worship the Dalai Lama. Matter of fact, whenever they mention his name, I saw this in India, Nepal, and Tibet. They're always calling him His Holiness the Dalai Lama. It's just not.
And you met him?
Yeah, I met him in India.
The Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
Let's just glaze over that one.
that was a side story. Yeah, we were in India in Dharamsala. and we were hiking, and then we had a couple weeks off where we volunteered in a Tibetan education center. We did conversational English with Tibetans that had emigrated to India, and they wanted to learn how to speak English because that was they needed to know that. And we also tutored some monks who were from southern India. And we applied to meet with the Dalai Lama. He happened to be there because he was sick, so it worked out good. He was recovering, and he wasn't seeing foreigners. But I can't confirm this, but I think the fact that we were helping Tibetans got us to see him. So 6 of us went to his house. We went in there, and he met us and talked to us very briefly. That was a whole show. He had a bunch of Tibetan pilgrims he also wanted to meet, but yeah, we met him there, and that was kind of a trip. We got some pictures.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was quick, but we did meet him.
It's one of those things, though. It's like certain places and people, it almost is so, I don't know. It's like picture perfect in your mind, and you're like, oh, it's just a place. It's just a thing that exists. You'll never imagine seeing it, you know, and to meet the person in his grandeur.
Yep.
It's got to be very awe-inspiring.
It was something else. I mean, afterwards we kind of sat down and let out a big, like, wow, that was crazy.
That's crazy.
But yeah, to answer your other question about what it would change, I think when the Dalai Lama passes away, it's going to be interesting to see who will keep the momentum going, because he's kind of like a flashpoint or whatever, or carrying the burden of what Tibet was, and I'm not sure how much the monks in Tibet will still have influence. I don't know enough about the politics and the religion in the country, but it'll be interesting because he's still looked up to very, very highly.
Yeah.
Very highly.
And now he's getting up in his age, isn't he?
Yeah, he's in his 80s. And where we were in India, again, this is a side story. We were at his temple, which is it's like a temple attached to where he lives. And we met pilgrims from all over the place, Indonesia, Cambodia, Tibet, America. I met some Buddhist nuns and Buddhist monks who were, one lady stands out to me. I think I met her in Nepal. She was a mother of 4, had grandkids. She grew up in Wisconsin, and then she turned 60 and became a Buddhist nun. It was in Kathmandu. But she's in one of the books or pictures.
Wow.
So anyways, that was Tibet. And then, I did some other adventures with pack paddle ski. And then there was a chance to go to base camp in Nepal. And I said, why not? And got the permission. And we flew, where did we leave? Philadelphia. We flew over the North Pole. We flew over Russia. And we landed in, we went to Qatar on that one. I'm sorry. We went to Qatar, or actually my daughter was teaching at the time, not student teaching. But we didn't have a chance to hook up with her at that point. On the way back, we did.
What was she teaching?
She was teaching grade school, just a 2-year rotation.
Oh, wow.
That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
Kids they'll drive you nuts. But we landed in Kathmandu, and that was very similar to Lhasa. It was just it was more freewheeling because the Chinese weren't, didn't have the control there. But Nepal, or Kathmandu was just like disorganized traffic. It was, you'd turn around, you'd see ancient temples. The wiring for everybody's house looked like spaghetti. If you wanted power, you just go out to a power pole, hook up a wire, and you have power, I guess. And I don't know what would happen if it didn't work. There was monks walking around. We walked by a river, and they're cremating people that just passed away, and they throw the ashes in the river. You turn one way, you see poverty. You turn the other way, you see mystery. You see garbage. You see stray dogs everywhere. You see beggars. Dust, motorbikes. You probably get clipped by one of those. Traffic is all over the place, and pollution, and it's just like a beehive of people.
Wow.
But Kathmandu was fun. We spent a couple days there visiting temples and kind of getting used to the altitude, and then to start the trip up to base camp on the Nepal side, you have to take an airplane out of the airport and land in a place called Lukla. Which is at 9,000 feet. So you get in this little plane that held, I think, 10, maybe 15 people, and the adventure starts right away, landing in the Lukla airport. The runway's only 1,600 feet long, I believe, and on one end of the runway is a 2,000-foot cliff. On the other end of the runway is a rock wall. So if you don't make it the first time, you're either going to go over the edge or into the rock wall.
Wow.
And it's at a 12-degree slope downwards. And as soon as we landed on the ground, it was maximum pressure on the brakes, and we could all feel it, and they were feathering the props to try to stop us. As we got out of the plane, everywhere you look, you saw crashed airplanes, helicopters that had crashed, and memorials to all the people that died. So the adventure started right away. On the way out,
You didn't at any point think turn around.
no. Well, you were in the airplane, and on the way back, you start at the top of the runway, and like I said, there was a 12-degree slope, so you kind of coasted downhill, and they just put max power, and you would all I could think of was Doolittle's Raiders when you see those B-24s taking off the carrier, and they're so heavy they sink down and then they come up. That's how it felt coming off on the way out.
Wow.
But we started the hike in Lukla. And the trail at that point is very wide. We had packs, but we had the Sherpas with us, and they have these gigantic animals called yaks that we put our gear on, and they would haul most of our heavy gear. We would carry a small day pack that was probably 20 to 30 pounds, and they would go ahead of us and set up tents. And now there was two ways to do this. Because we had connections with Sherpas, we were able to do this tent process, and they would also we'd had cooks with us. I think we had like 15 Sherpas. Most people stay at these tea houses, which are pretty bare bone, and you pay like $10 a night to sleep on a concrete slab next to everybody. So there's like maybe 10, 15, 20 people in a row all sleeping on a concrete pad. To use the indoor toilet, I think you have to pay $20, and an indoor toilet basically is just a hole in the ground. That's it. There's no showers. We did encounter one place that had showers about halfway up, and it was I can't remember. It was like $10 to take a shower, but they only had one towel that had been used by 16 people, so I passed on the shower.
Well, how did number 15 not say no?
I don't know. I just figured once you get the sweat and the dust on you, it's just you get used to it, I guess.
Yeah.
But with the yaks, were able to carry a lot of gear, so we would arrive at our, the end of the day, the hike, and we each had our tents assigned, and we would throw our gear in there, and then we had a cook tent, which was really good because a lot of people get sick on the way up because you don't know the sanitation of the, how clean the food is, how long it's been stored, and how clean the person is who's making the food. So we were really lucky that we didn't get it. I didn't get any sickness from the food, and most of the group did very, very well. The yaks only go so far. And after that, we had to make sure the gear, we hiked without, the full gear availability. One of the other aspects, too, is there's these huge ravines, and they had these suspension bridges that we walked over. And you can see there, I'm afraid of heights, and the suspension bridge is, you could probably get two people shoulder to shoulder, and below that is, you're probably 900 feet in the air. And they got a harmonic swing that goes with them because they're so long. God forbid you're on there with a yak coming the other way, which has these gigantic pointy horns which could gore you with no issue at all. So when a yak comes by, or a horse or a pony, you got to grab the side, look over, and look down. I tried not to do that a lot, but
wow,
there was a few of those there. One of them was very high, and but it walked over. What I would do is just keep my eyes straight. I would not look down, and it worked out good. But
900 plus feet. Wow.
You could still feel it swinging and things like that. Once we got above tree line, what the tea houses did to keep warm, we had down jackets, we didn't have heaters, but if you go into one of the tea houses where we would sometimes take our food inside to sit, just to socialize, they since there's no trees, they'll take the yak dung, and the women, mostly women, will make it into patties and dry them out, and they burn yak dung. And it has a very distinct odor. You could pick it out. I'm sure nowadays, if I ever get a chance to smell it again, I'll know exactly what it is. But they would dry it and burn it and go from there. The Sherpas were interesting people to talk to, too. They were limited English. Some were very good English, but they were just 100% behind us in support. If we got in trouble, like, you twisted your foot or you had a backache, they would help carry gear. They were very religious, always saying prayers. We visited a couple monasteries and got blessings. And because they were from the area, they had connections with the monks in the monasteries. I remember the last monastery we visited, I think, was in Tingboche, and we had our own private audience with the head monk there. And Rinpoche is the title. And we all got these things called katas, which are like white silk scarves around our neck as a welcome. And then we were given this red yarn to wear around our wrist until it falls off. Mine's in the book, and I didn't let it fall off.
Really?
But it was like a blessing. So as you look around and visit the village or see the Sherpas, they all have the red yarn being blessed according to each.
Why red?
I don't know why red, but it was just the blessing string that they used on everybody. And the funny thing is, I think one of our group asked, what's the Buddhist outlook of the world? We got a chance to interact with the head monk there, with an interpreter, and what's the Buddhist vision of the world right now? With so changing and things are different in the valley. And the head monk talked for, it seemed like, a minute or two. And then our interpreter just looked at us and he said, the Rinpoche head monk says, you Westerners, you're all the same. You all want a soundbite of what the meaning of life is. And all I could think of is you see all these cartoons all the time where these guys are climbing up mountains and they meet a monk. Like what's the
And he
meaning
gives
of-
him the two-piece word of advice. Yeah.
Well, we were at that place. This was the highest monastery you could go, and so I kept looking around for somebody crawling up looking for the meaning of life answer. The other thing that struck me with the Nepalese is they are very convinced of the Yeti.
Really?
The Bigfoot of the North.
Really?
The Yeti. Oh my God. The younger monks the younger Sherpas look at him and just laugh and shake their heads, but the older ones, oh my God, Yeti.
Really?
We got to watch out. They took us into one monastery and showed us in a glass case a Yeti scalp, which somebody on the internet said was just goat skin stitched together. So I don't know what it was, but they were very convinced of the Yeti, and they've seen strange things on the mountains and strange happenings.
Was it something that they were presently always looking for, like kind of on edge, or?
I think they were on edge, and they must, they've spent their lives in the mountains, and
Right.
they've spent their lives on ridges. Looking for those types of things, and they probably have seen strange things. Or I think the first, it's one of the yaks got killed, and what could have done that? It could have been a bear, but of course in their minds it was the Yeti. But as we made our way up the trail, he got thinner and thinner, and you could see the people that didn't have the experience, even at this lower level. I don't know if there's any backpackers in the audience, but we saw people with improper footwear. And then I remember this one lady distinctly because we were going up all the time. And when you're walking, it's kind of like running a 5K race because the oxygen is so thin. And this lady had both pack straps with her thumbs pushed out full just to keep her load from hurting her back, which obviously is not the way to wear a backpack. You want to use your lower back to support the
Right.
But you could just see the inexperience the whole way, and you just wondered how far they were going to make it up there. And you could also look, they were sold a bill of goods, I guess. We'll get you to Everest. You want to go to the base camp. But it was funny to see that at the lower levels. It started to thin out the number of people we saw as we got up higher.
What do you do if you can't make it? You just turn around with a Sherpa?
Yeah, what they would do is if you were with the group and you couldn't make it, they would put you up in a tea house and you would just wait for them to come back. Because you couldn't go any further and they had nobody to watch you. So we met people that had spent 4 or 5 days in a tea house just kind of hanging out, looking around. As we got to the high point, the oxygen was 1/2 of what it was at sea level. As I mentioned, you were constantly gasping for air. And we did some interviews on a satellite phone for a link back at the Pack Paddle Ski website. And you could just hear us talking. It sounded like we were just finished running a 5K race. We were all out of breath. And we were just standing there. To put your boots on in the morning, I was out of breath.
Wow.
I put my socks on and then just put them on. I had to take a break before I could even tie the laces because the air was so thin. We ate good, some typical stuff we'd eat, like oatmeal in the morning, but tea was a big item, roasted potatoes, coleslaw, sausage, a lot of bread and cheese. I think one night as we got real close, the cook kind of made a contrived pizza, which we thought was awesome. That's something that you normally don't encounter anywhere, but to see it that high was really good. But it was a really good time. One of the things that struck me also as you get higher, the mountain starts to exert its presence, whereas you're down below, you see a lot of people, you see tourism and all this stuff. But once you get higher, it's starker, it's colder, it's windier, and you look around and you can just feel that, you're a guest there. The mountain owns that place.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think was kind of a passing point is we went through this memorial stone garden. Reminded very much of a cemetery. And that's where I realized we're not in Kansas anymore. And there was these names, probably at least 100 stone memorials of all climbers that have died. Their bodies weren't there, but these were just stone memorials. One was there for Scott Fisher. He was one of the people that died in 1995 into thin air. But everywhere there's little poems from climbers' wives or brothers or sisters or parents with their picture on these stone rock cairns, and it was like once we went through that, it was like, uh-oh, we're not turning back now.
Wow.
Another kind of funny thing that we encountered is on the plane over, I sat next to a medical student who's going to med school in Philadelphia, and he was with a medical group that was doing a study to see the effects on altitude climbing this on blood pressure and something called the oxygen saturation. Your red blood cells hold on to oxygen, and you can measure that. Smokers, if you go in a hospital, they'll put this clip on your finger. Normal people who don't smoke, it's between 95 and 100. Smokers will be down 80s or in the 70s or whatever. But we got roped into doing this study where they would take our blood pressure at different points. I wore this thing called a Holter monitor, which continuously took my blood pressure. That lasted for about 2 days. I had to turn it back into them because it was waking me up every 15 minutes at night, taking my blood pressure. The cuff would automatically inflate. But we found out that our blood pressure increased about 20 points as we got higher. And our oxygen saturation, which was normally 95 to 100, dropped down into the 80s.
Wow.
I had one of those on top of Kilimanjaro when I was there in Africa because we were hiking with a physician. We put it on our finger when we got to the top. Mine was either 65 or 68. If I was back here in Utica, I'd be in the ICU with that oxygen saturation because that's very, very low.
Yeah. Barely able to deliver oxygen to your body.
That's why they wear canisters to the top because it's just so hard. Some people actually hike without them, but their blood cells are probably...
Doesn't it make you almost wonder how people with such rudimentary tools back in, when was the first voyage?
53.
53, how they could even manage.
Yep. Yeah, they did this, and they didn't know where they were going, and if they got in trouble, nobody was going to pull them out. It's the other thing, too. If you get in trouble at base camp, it's very difficult for helicopters to go to that altitude because the air is so thin.
Right.
So a lot of times they're carried out. We actually visited the highest, or it'd be, I guess, the first place that any medical casualty would come, the medical area there, which interested me, being, working in a hospital my career. And I talked to a physician who was from Chicago, and she was doing a 6-week rotation there. And if people got in trouble, if you hear on the news that there was an avalanche a couple years after we were there that killed a bunch of people, and I'm sure a lot of the people wound up in this medical clinic. And a helicopter could reach that, but it was very rudimentary stuff. It was more of a triage facility, I guess.
Wow.
Once we got to the base camp in Nepal, all I can remember was it was really, really cold. That night, only 5 out of 10 of us made it to supper. It was a long, brutal hike up to base camp where we were camped out at, and we were in our tent, and there was just frost all over the wall. Because as soon as we exhaled, moisture, our breath, it solidified on the tent. So if you hit the tent wall, you got this little snowstorm of frost that came down. This is where the oxygen was 1/2 is what it was at sea level. And, of course, in the middle of the night, I had to go to the bathroom. So you have to, I had most of my clothes on, so it wasn't too bad, but I had to get my frozen boots on. We usually sleep with the boots inside the sleeping bag so they wouldn't get frozen, but I popped those on. And then there's the zipper thing where, so you got a zipper. Of course, your tent mate will hear the zip, 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 or you can hear your neighbor's zip, zip, zip. And the frost falls all out. But I remember going out there and just looking around at the stars, the moon, and surrounded by these mountains. It's something I'll never forget. It was just,
wow.
I mean, Everest is looking at you. You're looking at Everest. It's 2 a.m. The stars are all over the place. And
wow.
It was just cold. I remember they were cooking our breakfast that morning. We had nothing to do, so there was 10 of us standing around waiting for the sun just to crest the mountain. And we were kind of like dancing around, just, trying to keep warm. As soon as the sun crested the mountain, we all got warmed up. The temperature increased, I don't know how much, but it was enough to keep us warm. But I'm thinking, how many people do that back home? Wait for the sun to rise in the morning so you can warm up.
Just to be warm, wow.
The next day, when we were at the base camp, we climbed this little mountain. I shouldn't say little. It really kicked my butt. It's called Kalapatar, which is Nepalese for, I think, dark sand. And this little mountain right next to our tents, you could climb up and you could get a dead-on view of Everest, very photographic point. We got up there. I'm almost dying. Like I said, it was breathing heavy. It was just the last steep part. We get up there, and there's 40 Russians drinking beer, partying, yelling, everything else. And I'm thinking,
typical Russians.
This isn't right. What's going on? And they were all drinking Everest beer that they toted the whole way up just to summer up there. but it was gorgeous. There's the sun there's no real clouds that sock stuff in at that point. We had just a tremendous view of the mountain from there,
Wow.
which I think is in the book too. When we got back, we had a party for the Sherpas. They kind of get paid at that point, and we had this little party at one of the points in Lukla the day before we flew out, and they each got announced, and they came up, and they paid for each of the services, and there was all this food, and they made this kind of like homemade alcohol stuff called Roxy. Yeah, which you drink it. It was in a plastic fuel can with a rag stuffed in it. And as I drank it, it had a very tiny flavor hint of WD-40 and gasoline. And all I could think of is, I've seen Everest. Tomorrow I'll be blind. How am I going to get out of here? But that worked out good. We flew back to Kathmandu. Like I said, that was a trip. We're at the end of the runway, downhill slope. We had to get up in the air. Pilot revved the engines. We all hung on. We all looked at each other like, oh boy. And you could feel your stomach go up and down, but we made it. And as you look out the window, you can see the whole Everest range. It was the best view in the world, I guess. When we made it back to Kathmandu, we still had some time left to walk around for a couple days. So I went to this temple called Bodhanath, and it's one of the larger temples in Kathmandu. People might have seen pictures of it. It's got these big eyes on it and the top. And there was a constant circle of pilgrims just going, where are they going? Counterclockwise, all the way around, saying prayers and stuff like that. And I just sat there, and it was mesmerizing for hours just to watch people from all over the world paying respects to this temple. We were there in, was it October? And I think 6 months later in April is when they had the big earthquake.
Oh.
So the temple got destroyed, but it's been repaired since. But a lot of the things we saw there got destroyed. A lot of the old temples and museums and relics got destroyed in that. One of the markets, like I said before, it was just absolute chaos. You could buy anything, and just wall-to-wall people. And I remember we took a rickshaw ride, I think, towards our hotel where we were staying at. And me and this other guy, we got to be in our 60s at that point, 60-year-old. The guy leaves.
When you did Nepal?
Yeah.
Wow.
When did I do this? 14? So, yeah, I was 60 back then. Yeah, I'm 60. Yeah, so anyways. So we get in there.
No excuses.
Yeah. So the rickshaw driver, looks, he sizes up for 1 or 2 minutes. Then he looks back. He goes, women? Like, what? And then he goes, marijuana, hashish. We go, look at each other like, what? He says, I have Nepal black. And I go, we'll pass on that. Thanks.
This guy in rickshaw selling you drugs and women?
Yeah.
What?
So we kind of went with the flow on that one. Yeah, all I could think of was, this is a movie long before your time, Midnight Express. You buy drugs in Nepal. Next thing you know, you're in prison for 50 years or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that was
wow. That's a new one.
Another part of the adventure there. And then he got back home, and what I did was that Shutterfly book pretty quick. But
so these are all photographs you've taken.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, most of them. Yeah, there's
This
one or two.
is a very professionally done book, guys. Like I said, I'll post some pictures of his photographs and stuff later. But
we got back, and it was, and our trip leader, I've heard this talk a bunch of times. He says, when you get back from an adventure like this, don't make any big decisions about quitting your job, getting a divorce, getting married, or anything like that, because this experience would be, can be life-altering for some people. And he says, don't make any big decisions either. Let this settle in. And there's probably not a day that goes by I don't think about these trips in one aspect or another. But I've experienced it. I don't feel special that I've done this. Anybody can do this, but I sometimes think that people just don't maybe have the same perspective or mindset after going through something like this. And it kind of makes you appreciate just the simple things. Sanitation is one. To have a bed to sleep in with a roof over your head, clean water. Even something simple like today, I went to Price Chopper and just walking the aisles and seeing all the food that's available.
Yeah,
we don't appreciate what we have here in America.
I'm sure once you are firsthand experiencing that type of culture that's so poor, and you're going to the next village to get a 50-cent lump of wool to make a shirt, it's kind of humbling of an experience,
But it makes you really appreciate what we have here, and I don't think a lot of people focus on the basics and those type of things. That's one of the life lessons I took.
I think a lot of people do need to do more and I have not ever been there firsthand yet to like a third world country or anything like that, but you need to go firsthand, and if not, you don't need to go and volunteer or anything necessarily, but you should experience it firsthand and have that kind of moment of recognition of what you have and where you come from and what you're raised in.
One of the things right now that's hot is this climate situation. I remember, this is sidebar from these trips, but in India, and even Tanzania, right in the middle of the village is just a huge pile of garbage, plastic bottles, and it's just, where's it going to go? When we were going back to New Delhi to fly out, we were 50 miles away from New Delhi, and you could see this haze. There's a garbage pit that's 3/4 of a mile high that's just burning, and they have to shut down the airport sometimes because the smoke is so thick. And this is an international airport, but everywhere you look, there's like plastic and garbage and refuge, and it's I don't know, that makes you think too about how much the environment can sustain getting beat up.
Yeah, I know. And even kind of turning it back to the Everest thing, it's like, even with all these issues, like you said, the mountain's struggling and there's more human waste than ever and there's more garbage than ever. And all these things are kind of compounding, and you have, like you were mentioning, helicopters can't get up there because of the altitude. If someone dies up there, you have to leave them there. They freeze there. There's bodies all over the mountain. At what point is it going to reach a pinnacle, a climax where it's too much? We don't know, but it's going to happen because I don't feel like Nepal, and I just don't feel that culture and those people can afford to turn away the money and the people coming. And as long as you have inexperienced climbers who just want the glory and saying, oh, I did it, and they're not stopping to appreciate it, and they're not taking the proper channels, as long as you have that, you'll always have people who are adding to the problem. And it goes for really any situation. So I don't know. It's it's humbling to hear firsthand from somebody who witnessed it and took something out of it like that, the deeper meaning behind it.
Yeah, well, I tried. That's it.
Right,
But those are my Everest stories.
That's amazing. I mean, it's an experience that seldom people get. You did the math earlier. What did we say? How many people have summited? How many have died? And all that?
I read this on a National Geographic, or I listened to it on a National Geographic documentary. I think there's been 2,000 that have. Hang on, let me get my glasses. 2,000 have made it to the top. 200 have died. So that means I think you got a 1 out of 20 chance of getting killed. 4,000 have summited. 200 have died. So 1 out of 20 chance.
1 out of every 20 people
not coming back.
Wow.
And I mean, physically too, it's, if you don't get killed in an avalanche, it's stressful on your body.
Yeah.
So if you have people that may not be in the best of shape, it's gonna it'll come to the top real quick.
What do you think it is in people that makes us want to do that? We always want to go into the deepest hole in the ocean, into the farthest depths of space, under the toppest mountain. What do you think it is? What is it for you that really drives your adventure and desire?
It's just a new experience. I think it's just different. I think this is called adventure travel. It's got a different spin to it, and it's got a little bit more, I don't know, credibility, realty. For me, that's it. But it's not right for everybody. Like I said, other people can go on different types of trips: Las Vegas, Disneyland, cruise ships, and that's just as good. I just think this is what interests me. Is just see something different like that.
Yeah. And people can do what they like. It's cool that you got yourself into this group of the packing and hiking and everything. And it helps kind of facilitate and guide your mindset and where you want to go to your next adventure. Yep. What do you think's on the upcoming back burner that you got doing now?
I don't know. Right now, things are on hold. I've retired, and I think the last one I went on was in 2016. We did the Camino, which we hiked.
Yeah,
southern France all the way across Spain.
Yeah, so that goes to the. I had known about this before. I forgot where I'd seen it, but it's the Cathedral of St. James, right?
In Northeast Santiago. Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So you did the whole voyage right to the cathedral?
Most of it, yeah. We were running out of time, so we took a Uber for a couple miles to make so we'd make it in time. And there was a movie about this a couple years ago too. I can't remember the name right now.
Maybe it's the movie that I'm thinking of then, because I had heard about that when I was reading your list. I looked into it a little more. I was like, oh, I know that.
But anyways, that was the last one I did. I don't have anything on the radar right now. People keep asking me, but since I'm retired, I kind of geared down a little bit. And, I'm still keeping active, but nothing's on the horizon right now.
But once that good final adventure comes,
I'll let you know.
You'll seize the day. All right, that's what I wanted.
I'll let you know.
The exclusive on it.
Yeah, you'll get the first one.
So What in all these adventures that we had highlighted on, and especially the one we were just talking about, is there ever a situation where you're feeling uncomfortable, unsafe, or anything like that, or have you found that you've had really good groups in
This
networks?
is why I like Pack Paddle Ski, because they always use really solid judgment. They will, if we're in trouble trying to climb a mountain, they will say we're not going. They'll call it.
Yeah.
They make the call. I don't recall any situation where we were in danger or potentially had danger. We were always prepared, and the leaders that I've been with, especially a guy named Rick French, is always thinking 2 or 3 days ahead.
Yeah.
I can't think of an example that really sticks out that we were either going to run out of food or miss a connection or have some sort of weather emergency or whatever. Is always prepared.
Yeah.
And I like that element of caution on some of these trips, because you hear so many of them, they don't practice that way.
Exactly.
Get themselves in deep or in over their heads. But
and I think that's a fundamental reason why some people don't travel, is they feel it's so outside their comfort zone that it's almost incomprehensible for it to work out well. All they do is sit home and they see these horror stories on the news or whatever.
Yep.
I mean, recently Dominican Republic really in the news for a lot of issues with American tourists, and people get these nightmarish thoughts in their head and they just don't want to leave the house.
Right.
But I think what it comes down to is proper planning. Get yourself a group of like-minded individuals who also have those same ambitions and goals, and really just take your time and make sure you're doing it the right way.
yeah, and
And be cognizant of your surroundings.
Physical abilities too are the other thing too. If we get in trouble, how can we get out of this? But that I've always felt very comfortable with this group for those reasons. There's that sliver or that framework of caution that you can't get yourself in. And the leaders are always thinking a step ahead. What if we get in trouble? How can we get somebody out of here? What happens? And things like that.
That's great.
So, but no, I can't think of a situation that I've been in. I've been some pretty wild stuff.
That's awesome.
That we've been okay with.
Yeah. Well, on the opposite end of it, we were talking about how well your meals and everything had gone during that trip. Was there ever a trip where you got really food sick or caught anything like that?
Not me.
Even
everybody else.
Very fortunate adventurer.
Yeah, my wife thinks I have an iron stomach. No, I'm very lucky that way, because I've seen on a lot of trips people, getting really sick. Either it's in the water or the food. I'm very cautious. Like on these trips, I ate stuff that was cooked, bottled water. Even in Beijing, we brushed our teeth with bottled water. I'm very cautious to eat like just plain rice or plain broccoli, stuff that's been cooked. But other people buy stuff on the street. Or
I was gonna say, do you not delve into a lot of street food and?
No, because I've seen people get in really bad situations buying like a lemonade or something. You don't know where the water came from, and spent all night. Roommates have spent all night in the toilet, either throwing up or doing something else.
Wow.
So I've been I got to knock on wood, but I haven't had a situation where I had a stomach issue at all.
Yeah, that's tremendous.
And I think I'm one of the lucky ones.
Because those are definitely things that would kind of put a...
It could really knock your
hindrance.
socks off. Yeah, you throw up, you get your electrolytes off, you're weak, and if it happens the night before a 10-mile hike, there's no backup. There's no truck that can take you, because we're so far in the back. There's no roads or whatever. What do you do? So but so far it's been okay.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's very fortunate. So of all these various different challenges and achievements you have, do you have one that is the most satisfying? And would you say it's Everest or?
No, I was anticipating a question like this. They're all so different. You can't put them in the same comparison. I look back on a lot of them. I actually, when I typed out the list for you, I said, oh, yeah, I forgot about that one. But no, they're all so different that I can't think, you can't stack them up on a scale of 1 to 10. Obviously, some are a little bit more. Obviously, the Everest thing is on the adventure side is a little bit higher than maybe going on the Appalachian Trail down in New Jersey or something like that. But, they're all different flavors, and the people you meet and the experiences are all different. So I can't say that that's a. You could rate them that way.
No, that's a fair assessment. Each one has their own little bit of flair to it, Yep. And then I had a friend at work who I'd actually. A lot of people are really looking forward to this episode, believe it or not.
All right.
Because a lot of people don't believe somebody like this could live in our own backyard, and it's like, just go out there and do it, because you're local, right?
Yeah, I live in Rome.
Yeah, perfect. I mean,
Yep.
Are you from there your whole life?
Yeah, Rome.
Okay.
Yeah. I went to Albany Pharmacy for 5 years, and then I worked in Maine for 4 years, New Hampshire for 6. We moved back to Rome, 1987.
So do you know the Ellsworth area at all?
Ellsworth, Maine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My grandparents lived there for like 20 years.
Yeah.
I spent every summer up there.
Yeah,
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, we go to the diner that's there, and then the Union River has a fish house. And
Yeah.
we like going to Scootacad instead of Bar Harbor now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I know.
Bar Harbor's very
Ellsworth.
commercialized almost.
Yeah, I know Ellsworth good.
He had wondered, was there ever a moment you wanted to stop? You know, whether you're hiking and just thought, man, this is it, I can't do it, turn around, or
No. There was some moments that were harder than others. We did a winter ski into Mount Katahdin in Maine, which is the highest mountain in Maine, and we were hauling a sled that weighed about 80 pounds. Or I was hauling a sled that weighed about 80 pounds. We had a pack on our back, but the only way to get all our gear in was to ski in with that. And that was just physically hard. And this is a cardinal rule, never try out new gear on your adventure. I did. I got some ski boots the night before we left. I put them on, and the ski boots pressed a zipper into my leg, which made one of my nerves numb. And I didn't know what was going on at the time, but I skied in pain with a numb leg into there. That was hard, but what's the choice? You can't,
I know.
You can't sit down and say, I'm out.
not do it.
Not do it. That was just hard. Now I got back. I saw a podiatrist, and it took 3 months for the feeling to come back. But other than that, no. I mean, everything is hard. I think a lot of it is the preparation. You understand it's going to be hard, and sometimes it's harder than what you expect. But I've said this before, and I'm sure you know this. Mental is so much stronger than physical.
Absolutely.
It's mental. If there are people that probably are a lot better shape than I am, a lot stronger than I am, who would not relish sleeping on the ground, pooping in a hole, and eating burnt food off a campfire. It's attitude. And the phrase I've heard, too, is you become comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And once you're at that stage, you just take it as it comes. And it puts things in perspective. So you got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And
I think it's nice to kind of go back to your roots every once in a while. You know, I try once a year to go up to Elger Island in the Adirondacks and just shut the phone off, sleep in a lean-to out under the stars, you know. All you got is a campfire and whatever. If you want to eat, go catch some fish, you know. And it's kind of like when those moments happen, like we had mentioned earlier, it really gives you an appreciation for everything you have. And like when you get home and you won't feel so bored all the time or so needing to shove your face so full of social media and TV and all this stuff. You know, it's like you really just want to get back to the basics and you appreciate doing a little household chore here and there.
So that's like I said, meals, you just appreciate what you have. Grocery store, you go in there and just say, man, I'm so lucky. Your health. I was extremely lucky to be able to do this.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people my age that have hip, knee, back, neck injuries that can't do this stuff. So... But no.
Yeah, it's all about taking care of yourself as well, right?
For sure.
You eat a pretty balanced diet and
try.
exercise and all that.
I try.
Yeah.
I try. It's always a struggle. Everything that tastes good is bad for you. What, ice cream, donuts, Doritos?
I know.
I don't know.
Me, especially, I love this little thing called milk and cookies.
Yeah.
At about 9 o'clock every night.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't want to do good.
It's a struggle.
Yeah, I know it.
But that's it.
So... do you have any piece of advice maybe for, I like to kind of wrap things up with, if somebody was, you know, a wannabe adventurer or somebody just getting into the hiking field, what would you think?
Yeah, I would start small. You know, it's maybe a couple, like a Bald Mountain. Like, bam, you get for a small hike, you get a big, huge view. It's a big payback, small effort. Start slow, get used to your equipment. Always be prepared if you're going in something like that. Have a flashlight, a rain tarp. Expect to spend the night overnight in case you get in trouble, but let somebody know where you are.
Yeah.
Just basic, or join a hiking club. That's one of the two foundations that gave me the start was Boy Scouts and then the Adirondack Mountain Club Albany chapter. Because you could always, if somebody says you want to go on a winter ski, I can tick off a list of things that I'll need, that I'll carry all day, that I'll never use, but you might need them in case you get in trouble, especially in the winter.
Better to have and not need than need and not have.
Yeah, there's a phrase like that. If you have it, you can put it on. If you don't have it, you can't.
Yeah.
And then you have to balance it, too, with weight and what you're going to do. So just build that off experience and keep trying stuff. And push.
And we are very fortunate in this area to have the Adirondacks in our backyard and be able to find groups like that and take those adventures. I know I started a few years back doing the Fire Tower Challenge.
Yep.
And it's not like you got to be ridiculous and do it every one a day or anything, but you can go on your weekends and enjoy it. And I think to date, probably one of my hardest hikes was Snowy Mountain, again, because I was just underprepared. And it's about, I think, 4,000, but it's a really kind of steeper hike.
Is that Indian Lake area?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So I thought it was a 3-mile round trip. It was 4 miles one way.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I go in there with like a bottle of water and half a sandwich, and now
Yep,
I
there
am,
you go.
sweating to death.
Yep.
And again, it's just do your thorough research and, take a little bit of time. But
Yeah, map, compass. Don't rely on a cell phone because
Yes.
they won't work.
exactly.
Bugs, you got to be prepared for bugs.
Bugs
They'll
is a
drive you
big
nuts.
thing. I got tore up from black flies on
Yep.
the Fulton chain this weekend.
Yep.
You can see it probably in my face right on the screen. I'm so sunburned.
Yeah, sunburn, but sunscreen is another thing. That could keep you all night if you got bad sunburns.
Oh yeah.
But that'd be the basic advice. Start slow on small hikes, and then work your way up. And then the high peaks is usually something people shoot for.
Have you done the 46?
I got 28 of them.
Okay.
I got when I was in college, I was knocking them off. Then I moved to Maine and kind of lost track, and then the family and all that stuff.
So you've probably done a bunch of them in Acadia then, right?
Yeah.
I've done, when I was younger, I went up there when my grandparents were still living there. I did the Beehive,
Cadillac.
Yeah, you of course right up the precipice, right?
Yep,
and
yep.
you check out the gift shop and everything up there.
Yep.
It's beautiful sights, like you said. It's right on the ocean. You got
Yep.
the whole bay and everything.
Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. But I mean, all those things are relatively in your backyard. If you don't need to be over in. You don't have to be in Tibet. You can work your way up to it. And I think once. If you're saying right now you have an itch for it and you want to just be out in nature, I love camping, I like hiking. I think if you take the steps and try to find either a group or just kind of spearhead going into your own adventures and doing these trails that are well marked, the Adirondacks are well labeled and everything, I think you'll be able to develop your skills, your desires, and it sharpens, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So,
but that's all I could think of off the top of my head.
yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, I mean, we could do this forever. I definitely, we're going to have you back on talking about
Sure, pick a place.
Kilimanjaro, Appalachian Trail, your Ireland hikes. You did a lot of Ireland hikes.
Yeah, I've been there, I think, 11 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that just kind of a routine thing? Just love it there?
There's a section of Ireland called Big Bends, or up in the Roundstone area, north of Galway. And we know, again, Pack Paddle Ski was there, but we've gone on our own since. A guy has a bed and breakfast who grew up there. And it'd be like around here if you had somebody from Ireland come over here, you introduce them to a farmer from Sequoit, and he says, I'll show you the real places to go, versus somebody that comes from a metropolitan area leading a hike or a trip, things like that. So we've gotten to see a lot of places that are off the curve there too.
Wow. It's tremendous, yeah.
We just got to go, I guess.
Again, it's just like a network of great people with like-minded individuals in it, It's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, so guys, get on out there and see what you can do in life. I like to wrap up this show just playing a little bit of our walking bass out. And man, what an awe-inspiring story, just to be able to say you were staring that mountain in the face, and to have that view at 2 a.m. I can only imagine what it was like for you.
Yeah, it was something.
And I think everybody needs to do that. Everybody should have that humbling experience where you go out and whether you're just kind of bonding with nature for a while and you're shutting off the phone, or you're really pushing your body and your physical limits and getting that achievement, or whatever it is, I think everybody should, if you think you should do it and you have that little bit of a niche and desire and drive in you, you should be out there doing it. And so whether you're finding a group or just picking it up as a routine hobby, just do it. The time is now. So stay tuned. This Sunday, I'll be having Caleb Kawaka on. He is a scout for the Anaheim Angels baseball team. So that'll be pretty awesome. And apart from that, guys, stay tuned for more Lost Guidance content coming out. And first and foremost, more than anything, try not to get lost out there. Kevin, thank you so much for coming in and joining me.
Zach, thanks.
And we'll absolutely be doing this again, guys. All right. Be real out there, everybody.